You're listening to the Coach Hodge and Banks Show on the Coaching, Culture, and Athletics Radio Broadcast Network. Sit back and enjoy the show. Please note, the views and opinions discussed in this podcast aren't necessarily the opinions of the host and or Coach Hodge and Banks Show on the Coaching and Culture Athletics Network.
All right. Hey, I want to welcome everybody to another Sunday night show here. It's supposed to be the Coach Hodges and Coach Banks show, but we want to appreciate you coming on here to the CCA podcast tonight. I do not have Coach Hodges in. He is at an all-star meeting, and I don't have my other counterparts. But you know what? We're going to get along great this evening because this is going to be a one-of-a-kind. Welcome to CCA podcast. This is on the Coaching, Culture, and Athletics Network. This is going to be episode 6. Tonight we're going to talk about culture killers. We're going to talk about the 5 big culture killers and basically touch base on, what happens, to these, these negative situations. And then we're going to look at has athletes changed or has society changed? We're going to look at that perplexing question and much, much more. Tonight we have veteran coach Kelly Spann. 18-year coach, graduated from Granbury High School, Texas. He has his BS in PE/coaching degree from Crown College, Minnesota, a master's degree in sports management from U.S. Sports Academy in Alabama. Married to Angela for 21 years. Claire just graduated, 18, attending University of North Texas. Nolan will be a junior, 16, at Frisco Lone Star High School. From 2001 to 2006, he was the head baseball coach at Crown College in Minnesota. It's a NCAA Division III school. 2008-2009, volunteer assistant baseball coach, Northwestern State University, Louisiana, NCAA Division I. 2009 to 2015, the head baseball coach. You're going to have to help me with that, Coach.
Natchitoches, Louisiana.
Natchitoches, Louisiana. That's a tough word. That's definitely that's a tongue twister. 2015 to 2018, head baseball coach, Center High School, Texas, and 2018 to present, the varsity assistant baseball coach for Frisco Lone Star High School in Texas. You've also been the assistant football coach at each high school, correct?
Yes, sir, Chuck. Yeah, I appreciate you for having me. This is awesome.
Oh, absolutely. It's always great, to be able to pull in, other coaching aspects and different aspirations. And, I've been following you for several weeks here since I started up the Twitter account. And it's just interesting, when you're able to talk shop with another coach from another state, you kind of get a new reflection. But you've kind of been all over, especially the Midwest, correct?
Yeah, that's the Lord led us up to Minnesota after I graduated high school, and I actually attended Crown College where I coached, and was there 5 years as a student athlete, and then came back, and so was able to spend some time there in the Midwest. And as we talked earlier, it's kind of hard to coach baseball indoors, and so I wanted to get back south, and the opportunity led us down to Louisiana and then back into Texas, where I'm originally grew up. So I've been all over, seen some things, some different ways to play baseball, and it's been great.
Yeah, and it's definitely got to be a cultural difference, from state to state, correct?
It really is, and the Minnesota nice that people talk about, and then also the harsh winters. And then you go to Louisiana, and the Southern hospitality and the food culture is big, and then the heat, obviously, in the South. So people are the same. Just they may talk a little bit different, but generally, people are great, and the people we've come in contact with have just been a huge help to us, and it's been just an awesome ride these last 18 years.
Yeah. Now, before we get into this, the 5 culture killers, because that's kind of our start this evening. I definitely want you, share with the audience, where, when did you have this aha moment that I'm going to be a coach? Of course, baseball. There's just something about that ball in the summer and in that sandbox, isn't there?
It is, and growing up in Texas, I was able to. Real fortunate to play in a little league system, which it's not as heavy as it's been in the past as it is now with a travel ball system that's so prevalent now. But I loved it, and I loved competing. And then in high school, I played a little bit of basketball, played football in middle school, but baseball was my first love, and really wanted to play for Coach Randy Leach, who was the head coach there at Granbury High School. And he was the epitome of just an awesome coach. He really valued his players and the way he talked with them, and but also the way he challenged them. But unfortunately, I was never able to play for him. He transitioned his role into the head football coach. But I was able to play for a great guy, Shea Manny, and just enjoyed my experience there. And decided I wanted to be a coach. But really, after I graduated in college, after student teaching and dealing with high school students, I didn't want to coach out of high school. I didn't want to deal with high school students. And so I wanted to be an athletic administrator, an athletic director, and that's why I got my master's degree. But then when I moved back to Minnesota, the opportunity came in to coach baseball and be able to coach at the college level. So I took it. It was kind of a wonderful experience and a great opportunity. And so that's when I transitioned back into wanting to coach, and it's been a great ride.
Yeah, it is, coaching kind of comes and finds you personally, doesn't it?
I agree. And it's just that wonderful feeling that you get when you're able to impact a young person and be able to teach them a skill, and it translates on the field and how they execute it. And that's what gets my stuff going. The hair on the back of my neck standing up is being able to see that person execute something that they practiced and be successful, but also how they're successful off the field and how they can relate to people and to their peers and to their parents and to the people they come in contact with. That's just one of the greatest things that you can see. Absolutely.
Now, you brought up the travel ball, so I want to piggyback off that a little bit. When do you ever hit a situation, Coach, where you think that maybe they're playing too much travel ball?
Oh yeah, and again, as I mature, you talk about where I've been and my stops, and I still feel like I don't know much about coaching, even though I've been around it for a while, and I'm always trying to improve myself. But I think it's gone away from especially in the Midwest with the change of seasons. You can't play baseball year round, so that's why a lot of the Midwest players and the Northern players play football and basketball and hockey and different sports where they're a little more well-rounded. But when you get to the South and the weather is it's limited rain and a lot of sunshine, and so players feel like they have to specifically play one sport, and I believe that hurts us. So that travel ball is a big issue, especially at the high school level. Coming to the Metroplex in the Dallas-Fort Worth area where players can play all year round. And it hurts, I believe, some players because they either get burnt out or they get injured. And the expectation of their parents sometimes are so high because of where they feel like they can get a scholarship in a sport, frankly, that doesn't offer a lot of scholarship money in baseball. And so I don't think parents understand that. And they want to pay money to play on a travel ball team to garner a scholarship, where the NCAA Division I, they don't have a lot of money to give, and unfortunately, sometimes that golden egg is not achievable.
For sure. Now, it's interesting that we bring up travel ball because when you look at a program killer, in terms of culture, number one, you have to have parental involvement. But if that parent oversteps their bounds, that can lead to something that's going to disrupt the culture. Now, This is a personal, opinion, and again, we can all take it however we wish. But maybe there's questions in the chat. They can chime in as well. I truthfully believe that travel ball itself has created the society that started out as the helicopter parent, that would later become the lawnmower parent, that's now the snow plow parent, and I think and I'm going to pick your brain here a little bit, Kelly. I think the biggest issue is that when a parent becomes so involved and they pay so much money, and they're going from coach to coach to coach because they don't have the same coaches, that's kind of an issue.
Sure, and I think it just comes down to depending on the coach and how they communicate with that parent. I mean, I think that's huge, depending on the type of player that comes into that travel ball system. And there's so many great examples that are out there. And again, Twitter has been awesome.
Oh man,
with the way that there's so much information out there. And so there's some really good programs out there that do it right. And they do things that are focused on development and focused on the player getting better. But there's also those programs out there that frankly, they want to, get the money and show up to a game and just write a lineup up and let them play. And so it's hard to be able to judge what the parent is feeling, because that's their son, that's their daughter, depending on, it's travel ball, softball too, and how they conduct themselves and what they expect out of that organization. And so, sometimes we've seen teams that are created by a parent that was unhappy with an organization, and they decide to create their own team, because these tournaments will take, anybody that pays the fee to come and play. And so there's really no regulation, that's set up for that. So I think a culture killer kind of depends on how that parent is communicated with. And you have to keep those open lines of communication to be able to have it be successful.
Absolutely. And, it's amazing that we have communication up there, because I think it's definitely a make or break for any organization, right?
Yes, I agree. And how you can to put your values in front, what you're really trying to get out of this experience, is very important for those parents to be able to understand that. And, again, with the travel ball, there, it's kind of limited rosters depending on how you set it up, and expectations they have. Some organizations, they have 18 players, but, maybe 6 of those players are pitchers only. And then you have some dual players and how they set that up. But if that's not known up front, then that can cause problems down the end as far as playing time. And are we trying to win? A lot of kids feel like that if they're not on a winning program, that maybe they not be looked at from college recruiters. And then you got the other players that they just play for themselves and they want to post all their stats and how they did, and maybe not think it from a team aspect. So, but until college recruiters stop going to travel ball tournaments, this problem will persist. But yet that's what college coaches have to go see, because they're busy during their season. So they want to see players play during the summer. And so it's kind of this catch-22 that you have as far as, what happens. And, it's kind of out there. It's been talked a little bit about as far as, high school sports. Is it going to be, is the future of high school sports in jeopardy? Yeah. Is it going to be limited to, to just a travel ball type environment? Because, school districts get wind of that, and that's something they can feel like they can save money. High school sports, it may be eliminated. We don't know. I hope not, because I work in that business. Yeah. But, that could be something down the road that might happen.
Yeah. I've had that conversation, many times, and every time I'm like, no, guys, we can't do this. Coach Evan Swanson, he's also one of my co-hosts. He's got this question for you. What advice would you give youth/travel ball coaches and parents regarding what is best for their kids to help them reach their full potential? That's a pretty loaded question.
Ooh, that is a loaded question. Great question. But I think it's, again, the buzzword besides culture, I think the buzzword is development. And what can that travel ball or what can that organization do to help their player get better? And, we want them to perform before they may even know that skill. And so, for example, our summer league team that we're coaching right now is mostly made up of freshmen that will be sophomores next year. And so they have some of the fundamental skills, but, baseball is a great game because, every play is different. So the ball can tell you what to do in different situations. And so what may require somebody or a player to get in front of the ball in Little League, well, they don't have time to get in front of the ball in Little League or at the high school level and throw a guy out. They may have to backhand it, or may have to use their one-handed glove to be able to do that. So I think if parents can understand that it's about the development of their player to help them, and this is what we tell our players in the summer team is we're playing now to help you try to make the JV team next year or try to be on the varsity level next year. And what are those things that you can do that? Because if they're not getting better, then what's the point? And that's the battle we come with as far as that travel ball situation. But if those expectations can be met, are they having fun? Are they getting better? And they learning something about the game? They need to learn something new pretty much every day. And that's what we ask our players. Did you learn something today? What did you learn? Did you do something right? Do something wrong? And hopefully they become better players. Absolutely.
Now, that kind of draws us into, I would say, one of the top 5 culture killers, which is territorial attitudes. And I want to pick your brain a little bit, Kelly, about, okay. we have these kids where we want them to come into open gyms, or, they have to do off-season programs and this, that, and the other, much like,
right.
The summer to get them ready for the varsity level as well. Do you have issues like with other coaches, or is that sharing arrangement pretty easy? And again, we go back to communication as well.
Sure. Well, and that's again, in Texas, there's 1A and there's 6A. And so there's 1 through 6A, depending on the number of kids that go to your school. So, for example, 6A schools have over probably 3,000 students.
Okay.
And then your 1A schools probably have, 250 students. Those numbers are a little bit off, but you can see how it goes from small to large. And so I was at a 4A school before. And so we were able to share athletes quite a bit because we had guys that played football, basketball, baseball. And so our program was set up where we never discouraged the player. If they want to play all 3, we encouraged them to do so. And usually they're the best athletes. But as you get into 5A, 6A, that's when they begin to specialize a little bit. So our program here at Lone Star is we are always encouraging our players to play 2 sports. Again, it's a different season. It promotes camaraderie, in the school, school spirit. It promotes a rest period. For our baseball guys, they're throwing all year round, and studies have shown they don't need to throw for at least 2 to 3 months, and so that gives them opportunity to rest. And so for us, we are really trying to make sure that we share those athletes and are able to do that. But there's some schools that don't. They struggle with that.
Wow.
And how they don't allow them, or they push them to go one sport. And that's just not the high school experience. I don't feel like. So we've had guys that have, that were going to be really good football players, and they decided to play. I'm just going to stick with baseball. And so we've tried to, sit alongside. Look, I know it's your decision, but we encourage you to play football until at least your junior year, and maybe that's when, if you don't feel like football's for you, then you can transition. But so that territorial thing, it can be a problem, but I believe now, I think the communication level between coaches and programs are a little bit better, and they understand that, hey, this is a really good athlete, and hopefully he can come help us.
Yeah.
He's a really good athlete in football. Man, I'd love to have him on the baseball field, and hopefully he can make that transition pretty well.
Do you have very many four sport athletes in the current school district?
No, not in the 5A level. That's very rare. And because the 5A level, they're not able to, the schedules of the seasons pretty much are the same time. Like 4A, for example, again, as I alluded to last year, The 2 years ago, the basketball team went to almost the state playoffs. And football, the previous season, almost went like 4 rounds deep. And our basketball coach canceled 2 basketball tournaments because all the players are playing football. And that was normal. That was normal. And he was like, yeah, we do it all the time, because my starting point guard was the starting receiver, and our quarterback was the other point guard. So, so at those smaller schools, it happens quite a bit. But here at the 5A level, it's a little bit more difficult. For example, we had a kid that was a freshman, but he was a very, very good player, and he made the varsity. But he could also run track, and he was a very fast kid. And our track coach said, hey, I'd love to have him. I said, hey, yeah, that'd be great. When's your regional track meet? It was on a Friday of a district baseball.
Oh, boy.
And so, unfortunately, he said, Coach, I'm going to play baseball. His track wasn't his sport, and he wasn't able to do that. But so at those lower levels here in Texas, they actually try to have track practices and track meets on Thursdays, so they don't run into district baseball games on Fridays. And so you're able to utilize that. But at our level, at 5A, it's a little bit more difficult because so many kids specialize in that. But if it's an opportunity that we can be able to do that, we'll definitely try to get that athlete to be able to do that.
For sure. Now, Coach Swanson has another question, and he's got some pretty good questions. I know his head's probably swelling as he's sitting in his pool. Yeah, he got a pool. he got a pool today. And he's saying $5 to come over. It's one of those. Yeah, I won't get into that. But anyway, okay. Here's the question: Do you have your baseball players lift during the season, or is it they're weightlifting out of season? Or is okay?
Oh, Chuck. Yeah, that's a hot topic.
Yeah.
With baseball coaches and trying to encourage our athletes to lift during the season, and we. We're near TCU, which is in Fort Worth, and their strength and conditioning coach is on Twitter quite a bit, and a little bit different, obviously, those college guys because they're bigger, stronger, faster. But,
sure.
But as far as for our program, we try to mimic that. We lift at least 3 times during the season, and we do usually a Monday, Wednesday, Saturday lift, and that will correspond with our Tuesday, Friday district games. But I'm a big proponent of it. At Center High School I was at, our kids did not want to lift really at all, but then they didn't want to lift during the season. And by the time when I was there, my first year, they were sophomores. And by the time that they were seniors, they were lifting really heavy during the school year, and during our season, lifting very heavy, at least twice a week. And they loved it. And they were injury free. They felt a lot better. They were able to challenge themselves. So when I came to Frisco Lone Star, they had not done that in the past. And so they were a little bit resistant as well, but then they bought in because they felt good. And so, I myself and our other coaches that are in our district, I know that they lift during the season. So if any time they can, they're teenagers, and they can go to baseball practice, and then probably at 9 o'clock at night they're playing basketball anyway. So they recover pretty well. And so for us, we lifted in the morning, and they were able to recover and be ready to go at practice because we didn't start school till 9, and so we were able to come lift at 7 in the morning and then get a 45-minute lift in. But I just can't express enough how I think that baseball players needed lift, because strength and speed and power, obviously plays in the baseball field.
Yeah, and you can see it. I mean, I don't know how many times you take a team to a regional final game, and you're like, and your kids are like, oh my goodness, look at those legs, look at the arms. And
yes,
there's
I've never been on a team. I've never had a team that I've coached before that looked like that until that senior group at Center. My last year there, they were a good looking group, and they walked in there and they looked good. And I had a coach tell us, he said, "Man, you guys look really good. You guys lift." I'm like, yeah, we lift pretty good, So that was a great feeling to kind of validate that experience that we had with those guys in the weight room.
Did you have a lot of pushback early on, and how long did this take?
Oh yeah, we had some real strong pushback from the players and from the parents there my first year. And, well, this is not football. We're not going to lift like football players. Well, the lifts we were doing were power lifting, and we kind of sold it to them. And once they saw that the ball was coming off the bat a lot faster, a lot harder, once they saw that they were fresher, their arms were fresher, and finally they figured out, like, I think I can do this. And so it took about a year and a half to get after them with that. And so here at Lone Star, we do that as well. Then there's a summer lifting program that we do that's 4 days a week. Now it's a little bit different in Texas. We're not allowed to coach our own players in the summer.
Okay.
And so the team that I'm coaching are players that are from other schools. So I can't coach any of our players here at Lone Star. And that goes statewide for everybody. And so we actually have an outside strength program that comes in to Lone Star and runs our strength and conditioning. So that helps us. It helps us coaches to give us a break. And we played our playoff baseball. We played probably till the third week in May. So we had a pretty long season, a successful season. And so it's kind of nice. They get a break from us. We get a break from them. But so it's a little bit of a transition here with our weightlifting program, and that we'll do that stuff more in the fall with the weightlifting as well, and try to get them back in shape.
Now, we talked, pre-show, because you're also one of the assistant football coaches. You're going to be able to go down to the freshman level, which will help, as far as that time commitment.
Yes.
Did you even see your wife last year?
No, not much. Not much at all. It was a grind, and when we took the job here, we talked as a family. My daughter was gonna be a senior at the time, and as I was looking to try to move up and try to become more of a full-time high school baseball coach, we knew we needed to make the move, and so when I came here, they said, well, we're going to have a role for you on football. And little did I know it was going to be such a large role, but I enjoyed it. We were successful. Our kids were old enough. They had their own activities, so they were busy anyway. And fortunately, Angela, my wife, she said, hey, you do what you need to do. And, it's going to be okay. And so I was, it was a grind, and I learned a lot. It was awesome. Hopefully get in some of the coaching stuff that I was able to work with the offensive coordinator and kind of create some habits that helped me during the baseball season too. So it was worthwhile, and we were successful. We won a lot of games, and it created some of that atmosphere at the school, because football does run, the high school sports scene in Texas. And so if you're successful in football, that really carries over to the other sports because everybody gets excited about it.
Absolutely. And it does. It takes a special woman to be a coach's wife. And I'll give a shout out to Stephanie. She'll probably listen to this later on. It's, I tell you.
Good for her. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh man. I tell you. So we have two, of our top 5, culture killers, communication, maybe territorial attitudes, and maybe that aligns in there. We only have 16 minutes left, so I definitely want to get into a couple more of those. Let's go to your top 2, Kelly. What do you think are the top 2?
Well, I think that unfortunately, it just depends on the parents and their attitudes towards the program and how they view what their son's role is, son or daughter's role on the team, compared to the coach's attitude of that player on the role, his or her role on the team. And so, you talked about selfishness. You may need to squash some of that, and that's why we moved to the Metroplex, DFW area. Because I need to get a little bit better at that and kind of make sure that I'm communicating that properly, but also how to handle that dynamic. Because as we get back into the high school season, and what did they do on their previous summer league season? Because a lot of that is that's their season. And so when we talk about our culture, or we talk about our school spirit and how they want to handle the program, how do you tie all these characters together and be able to have a successful season here? And so that's kind of some, you got to tread lightly with that, because we've had some parent meetings this past year, and some parents weren't happy, but a lot of times that's the expectations the parents have. Sometimes they're different than what the player has. They know their role and they know what they're supposed to do. But sometimes they don't communicate that very well to their parents. And I'm a big proponent of that, we talk to the players, and the players, their responsibility is to go talk to their parents and share, hey, this is what coach is thinking. This is my role. And then hopefully they can sell it to their parents so that meeting doesn't happen. But if it does, we can be honest with them and be able to point to things that they need to work on, or things that they don't do very well, and hopefully we can come to a resolution. But for the most part, parents can see that when they play. But we did a better job this year too, as far as coaching our entire program, because we only have one field even at the 5A level here, because we actually have 10 high schools in our district.
Oh, wow.
So facility space is kind of limited. So what we did is we had our freshman practice in the morning, and then during the period they would lift, or they do some skill type stuff, and they would leave after school. So that would help us with the JV and the varsity to be having attention to them. So I think we did a really good job of satisfying how we were taking care of freshmen, instead of just, hey, you guys go over there and stand around and watch, or go throw the baseball. They were actually able to get on the field and to be able to do some of the things they needed to get better, which helped us, obviously, because we had 10 seniors, so they graduated. So we're going to have to revamp and be able to bring those guys up. So I think that portion of it is trying to make sure. And again, I think it just comes down to communications, Chuck, and how do you communicate. That would solve a lot of ills with the top 5 program killers. Whether it be selfishness or not wanting to accept the role that they're in, and understand that, yeah, you may be a role player now, but injury can happen, failing grades can happen, no pass, no play in Texas, and so we have guys that were ineligible at freshman and at JV level, and so they're not playing, and so you can always be ready for that opportunity that if it comes, it is able to do that. So if you can do that, if you can be able to communicate that, it's not going to be perfect by any stretch of imagination, because you have to work at it every day, and that's your role as a coach, is to make sure that you're expressing your thoughts and feelings towards a particular player. But it's tough because we have 45 kids in our program, and so there's not a lot of time in the day to be able to talk to every single one of them. But if you're able to, shoot them a text or pull them, outside of practice, or see them in the hallway, that goes a long way with ensuring that that everybody is satisfied and understands the goal.
Now, let's say the heck with culture killers. Let's talk about your culture shock, because you started out as a college coach and then became a high school coach. I mean, what was that transition like? I'm sure you've learned a ton of things when you're talking about how to build your team chemistry and things like that since then.
Sure. I mean, because college, you had the opportunity to see them a lot more, because you could call team meetings and they were on campus and they were available, and you could have late nights with them because they were in this controlled environment. And so it was a lot easier to see those kids more and more and more. There were no hours that you couldn't practice, and there's a little bit of stipulation with that. But so, yeah, but the pay wasn't very good, Chuck. So, that's the other reason too. So, my transition to volunteer in Louisiana to high school, was an adjustment. And so, then that's when the parent issues would creep in a little bit more. Because, in college, the parents aren't there. They're especially, the kids that come from far away. I mean, you didn't have to deal with that. So that was a little bit of a culture shock. So that was something I had to work on and like, oh, this parent's mad at me, or this parent keeps talking to me. They're trying to get in the inside, and who do you trust, and how do you talk about your program, and so you have to be a little more guarded, and you have to how you handle yourself off the field too. So those things you try to work on, but for the most part, it's still about dealing with people. The people, these high school guys, it's funny because they look like they're adults at times, but they're far from it. So, the teenage mind is kind of a weird place. I live with two teenagers. And so right now I'm kind of on that level because I have this, this microcosm in my house, but once they leave, I'm going to have to make sure I stay up to date with these guys. They're erratic, and they're emotional. And so how do you deal with that? So you have to be, psychiatrist, counselor, and all those kind of things all wrapped into one. But I've really enjoyed it because they have so much energy. The high school student has so much energy and excitement, and they really want to please you as much as they can if they like you, and that's your ultimate goal is, they want to buy into you as a person, and you've heard it before, Chuck. It's not what you know, and they won't care how much you know until you show how much you care about them. And so I've tried to do more of that. I've tried to put myself out there a little bit more, try to get together a little bit more as a team. We try to do some things, especially in the playoffs, a little bit more special, that we'll do some things, whether it be a team gathering or a meal. When I was in center, we went bowling during the playoffs one night. We had a pool party, and so you try to take care of them as much as you can, because then they'll play harder for you. So that was a little bit more of a transition going from college to high school, is trying to get down to their level.
Yeah, and sometimes I really have to take a step back and say, okay, this can't be the old school Coach Banks. This has to be the newly evolved Coach Banks, because society's different now. Yes. This will be the last thing that last concept we'll talk about, and then I want you to share a little bit about what Texas is all about, how it's different. This one's interesting. Do you think the student athletes have changed?
Yeah, I thought about that as you sent that question. I appreciate that. It's in the head of I think about it, but I don't think that it's changed much. Only because it's human nature, and there's a story. And I again, just reading some material, it was interesting. There was a dialogue that a man had, and he was sharing how much that the young people he was around were complaining, and they didn't have any incentive to do things unless they were told, that they were lazy, that they just didn't want to do what they were supposed to do. And it was a Roman captain, pre-BC, that was talking about his soldiers in the army that he was in. And so I don't think it's changed. I just think the influences that these teenagers deal with every day has changed. Obviously, with social media, with the amount of information that's in front of them, anybody, and that goes for parents too. I mean, anybody can look on YouTube. There's some wonderful videos about how to coach anything that you want. I used the YouTube video the other day to fix my dryer and explain it to the T. And so there's so much information out there. And so how do you kind of wrangle them in, and being able to have them focus on some things, and try to rally around things. Now they'll do a better job of maybe asking questions, because the way they're raised, they might challenge authority a little bit more. But again, that's just human nature. That's going to happen. I didn't grow up in the 60s, but I've read about the 60s. Yeah. I didn't grow up, the 50s. I mean, it's, I don't think teenagers are any different. I think the culture is obviously different, just with the things that are out there now. But there were some things that were going on that, that weren't written about or weren't posted on social media that have happened too. I just think it's just more on the forefront. So I don't think they've changed. I think there's just ways you need to talk to them a little bit differently. Like you said, you have to have more of a relationship with them. But the good coaches do that already.
Yeah.
And you can just know, you just see them do that, and kids gravitate toward that. I'm really honest. My wife tells me sometimes I'm too honest, but I tell kids all the time, that song, that Khalid says, I'm young, dumb, and broke. And I have no issue with telling a teenager, hey, you're young and dumb, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know everything, but I can help you. If you love me to help you, I can help you get better and show you some things that can be able to do it. And kids appreciate that. And if you're honest with them and not in a tear down, disrespectful way, but if you treat them like you would treat your own son or daughter, and you got to remember that's their, the players on your team are somebody's son or daughter. So if you treat them with respect, they're going to be able to respond to you like that. And
I appreciate you saying that. In my book that's going to be coming out here in late August, I write this little tidbit. One thing that will hold true for me until the end of time is this: the student athlete has never changed. The world around him or her changed and did so without us truly understanding the consequences. That's amazing. Awesome. We're about 3 minutes left. If you wouldn't mind, stay on afterward, because I do want to I want to schedule you for another one if you're interested.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to come back on. Sure.
Fantastic. Now, tomorrow night, I'm going to be having another special show. We're going to have head football coach Derek Doherty from the Fort Madison Community High School. Then next Sunday, I have Coach Zach Kelly, and if you follow Zach Kelly, you know that he got us a lot of Twitter followers this past week.
Yeah, I just followed him. Yeah, that was about last week. I saw that. And so that's pretty cool. Good for him.
It was kind of funny. The Twitter handles that I put on, the guys that are, helping us out with this coaching and culture, they said it was going ping, 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 ping almost all night. So
awesome.
Well,
that's the way it should be.
Do you have any shout outs you want to shout out there to anybody?
Well, I mean, just the coaches that I have come in contact with, Coach Rayburn at Lone Star, the head football coach, gave me the opportunity to be here, interviewed me, and then Coach Frankie, who's the head baseball coach at Lone Star, he's been great, letting me kind of come in and do some things that I've done before and bounce some ideas off of him. He's given me a lot of leeway to be able to do some things. And then Coach Humble, who's the offensive coordinator I've mentioned before at Lone Star, who challenged me to do some things that kind of raised my game football wise. But again, like I talked about, was able to put some of those things in practice for baseball and kind of set me up for some success that way. So, I hadn't had an opportunity to be an assistant, but just being around some really great coaches that I had in contact with in Natchitoches Central and Northwestern State. The head baseball coach there is Bobby Barbier. He's a wonderful guy. And he's done some great things there at Northwestern State. I think of Barry Bowman, who was the AD at Center High School while I was there, and it was good. Jimmy Irvin, who was the DC defense coordinator at Center High School too. Chris Randolph was an assistant basketball coach at Center High School. Hiram Harrison was the head basketball coach there. So those guys were just great, just to be able to bounce ideas. And there's great men that are in the coaching fraternity that are out there. All the Twitter handle guys that are out there that I glean information from, and they're also able to share. Jeremy Sheetinger, who's the head of the liaison for the ABCA, the American Baseball Coaches Association. I don't know him, but he put some good stuff out there. They do a podcast, and so I learned a lot from them too. So it's been wonderful. I'm still learning. I don't know it all. Wouldn't think I'll never ever be able to know it all. So it's good to have a lot of good people that are out there sharing information. Appreciate you, Chuck, putting this together. That's awesome. Look forward to reading that book and the guests that you have on. I feel privileged to be in the birth stage, I guess. Episode 6, and so hopefully this will be episode 600 very soon, and we can keep it rolling.
Fantastic. Well, we have about 20 seconds. There won't be any music on the outro tonight, folks. I do want to send out a special good luck to the Central Lee Hawks as they go on to play in their regional final game or district final game, and then Centerville as well next week. For everybody within the CCA broadcast network, we are out. Good night.
Good night.